But yeah, no, switching lanes to Group B, I think we should really start off with a team that every cricket fan minus fans of this nation fears, and that is Australia.
By the
So
way, real quick, before we talk about the players, are they one of the favorites you think to win this tournament? We'll obviously talk about it more in a future video about our predictions, about what's going to be coming up. But do you think they're a contender? Or
I don't think there is a single cricketing tournament where Australia is not the favorite. So
right, right.
I don't,
I guess I should what I meant was, do you think they are the sole contender? Do you think
yeah.
that they will have much competition in this?
Honestly, I think it may not be as smooth sailing as Australia think, you know. Like you said, we're gonna go a bit more in depth in our prediction video, but there is a lot of room for upsets. A lot of room for upsets. So definitely keep an eye on our video, the prediction video when we post that. So it is not gonna be smooth sailing, I'll say that much. I'll say that much.
All right, who have you picked from the Aussies?
So this time, I've been sticking to old guns for a bit, but now I'm gonna do a bit of a curveball. Matt Short is my pick. He's been announced for the squad. He is an all-rounder, and the reason why I pick him is that a theme with Australian tournaments is that they have a new star more or less in every tournament, right? It was like 2023, 2024 was really the year of Travis Head. I would say that was really his time, right? New players, they always come. Not well, he's not really new, but players who are not really that consistent. I feel like they come and they sort of solidify their place in Australia, and I think this is the time for Matt Short. A few statistics real quick, in the Big Bash League recently, he's had a record 104 runs from 54 balls in Adelaide. That is one thing. He's also been a consistent wicket taker as well. I think, when it comes to the spin friendly pitches, he's gonna do that much better. Obviously you have the pace attack of Stark and Cummins, but you need a bit of spin in that mixture. So this is where I think where Matt Short in those particular pitches, he's really gonna shine. So he is my one to watch.
It's interesting that this was the team that you picked for the curveball, because this is the one team where I've stuck with the old gun. I've
Yeah.
said Travis Head will be Australia's star player of this tournament. You can't really go wrong with Travis Head. He's like an innings or two in the Border Gavaskar Trophy where he wasn't at his best, a couple of ducks in there, but he is just so reliable for Australia. That middle order, he really one of the pillars of it. And of course, a couple of years ago in the World Cup in India, he was once again one of the star players in the South Asian conditions, and I just think he's going to be one of the main players there again, perhaps even one of the top scorers. But I really like Travis. He's one of my favorite players at the moment. I think he's a very classy batsman. You don't really get too many left-handed batsmen like him that play the way he does. So I really enjoy it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's as safe as pick as you can get. Travis said he's been reliable. He's been reliable for Australia, no matter the format. I think with Australia out, I want to talk about a team who don't play much cricket, but who've been winning the hearts recently in the big ICC tournaments, and that is Afghanistan. There was that famed game against Bangladesh where I think it was 119 that they had to defend, or what? No, was it 120 something?
Similar. It was the T20 World Cup last year,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes. It was around 127 they had to defend, but their game Afghanistan, really shining through. They're
Absolutely.
they're a team that's really adapted to pressure. I would say they're a team that's really adapted to pressure, and that's lovely to see. So, Abraz, who do you have from Afghanistan?
I've gone with someone who hasn't played too many games yet. He's a relatively new player. He's a young top order batsman, 23 years old. Sadiqullah Atal is my pick for Afghanistan.
Mm,
Thing about him is he hasn't played against the best of teams in his career yet. But I believe he's played a series versus us. He's played against Bangladesh, and he played against Zimbabwe in the series that very recently as well. And in both those series, he really performed well. He had a high strike rate, he had a high average as well. And I think obviously it's a big test for him. It's a youngster, he's early in his career, but I think with Afghanistan, they've got so many young stars with Gurbaz, and they've always had Mujibur Rahman and Rashid Khan as some of their best top players that they have in their team. But I think this is a player who can really also add himself to that list, and it'll be interesting to see how he does, and if he can put up with the test that will be there for him, waiting for him in Pakistan. And I think it's just a player to look out for. That's who I've picked.
So yeah, no, obviously, and I've been on the fence with Afghanistan because on one hand, I really like their opening partnership, right? With Rahmatullah Gurbaz and Hashmatullah Shahidi, they can really run well between the wickets. In my opinion, they're one player who I think has been consistent in these high pressure games, and that is Rashid Khan. The thing is that if you look at the matchups against, South Africa, against England, and against Australia, Australia is in Lahore, England's in Lahore, and South Africa is in Karachi. And I think in these pitches, because these are pitches where a lot of unpredictability, when you have a leg spinning ball come at you, and even it's as it is hard to predict, but when you add these elements in the mix, it becomes even harder. And I think this is where Rashid Khan is really gonna shine. His economy rate is at, it's between 4.2 to 4.5 in ODI. It's one of the best. And even in Lahore, he had his 3-wicket haul against Sri Lanka. I'll have to give Rashid Khan on this one.
I definitely agree with that. He's also yet to have a big tournament where he's been the star of the show. Like I remember it was Gurbaz in the last T20 World Cup who did really well, and in the 2023 ODI World Cup. Rashid Khan wasn't necessarily wasn't necessarily the top player of Afghanistan. And I mean, he's always been the star player of Afghanistan in general. And I think this is a big tournament where he can prove himself. Obviously, it's Afghanistan's first time as well in the Champions Trophy. And it'll be interesting to see what they can cook up. So we've got 2 teams left, Sam. We've got England and South Africa. Where do we want to go first?
I want to save South Africa for last. So let's really talk about England because.
All right, let's do this. Who do we have?
But I have one player, and this is purely based on his performance in the Mr. Gus Atkinson.
Gus Atkinson, I think, is a good pick because he performed well in the Test series versus New Zealand earlier last month, and I think it's definitely one that I think has the potential to be performing well in a big tournament like this. I, on the other hand, have gone with all-rounder Bryden Carse. Hasn't been it's not like he's played a lot of games. He's been around for a few years now, and in terms of his bowling, he hasn't done very well in his ODI career, or not as well as he would have liked. He's got his average, I think, is around 35, 36, and he has an economy rate of above 6 in an ODI, which I know that it's not something that he would be very happy about. And honestly, it's the same with his batting. I know his 24, I think he averages around 24, which is once again not the best. But the reason I've picked him is because of his performances in the last series against England. I think he was phenomenal over there. He had quite a couple of four-fers, and his bowling has been really, really good in tests. His economy rate was great. His average was, I believe, less than 20. So he's done great over there as well. And it's much more recent than all those ODI performances that I've just mentioned. So I think it might be a turning point for him, and hopefully that can translate over into the limited over cricket that he plays as well. And hopefully he can do good for England. But once again, these picks aren't necessarily who we think is the best player of the team, but rather who we think is a player that we can really watch out for. And I think he's a player that could be watched closely, and it'll be interesting to follow and see exactly how he does. But that's my pick for England. And I think that just leaves us with one country, and that's South Africa. Obviously, finalists in the T20 World Cup. They're going to be playing at Lord's in June for the World Test Championship finals. Semi-finalists in the last World Cup, ODI World Cup, and now they've got a Champions Trophy coming up for them. So who's your pick for South Africa, Sam?
I'm gonna have to say this one player really reaching the twilight of his career now. He wants to really end on a high note. That's Aiden Markram. He's had that three-match series against Afghanistan in the UAE just in September. Had that 69 unbeaten run, leading South Africa to a 7 wicket victory against Afghanistan. Even against Australia, he's had performances which include him scoring 152. So this is a seasoned veteran. He's a man you really want to have, coming into such a big tournament like this really pillar in that, mid to late all-rounder section. They do experiment with him up and down the order, but he's always going to be reliable. That's all I'm going to say here.
Yeah, that South African middle order it's a scary one, and honestly, I think you could pick really any of them, and it'll be a player to watch out for. We had Van der Dussen a couple of years ago, do so brilliant, but they're always
Yeah, yeah,
a team to be feared.
absolutely, absolutely. So it is. I think yeah, because I think Markram, he's been really chasing a trophy with South Africa his whole career, and that might play into this. And I think he's gonna be the one to watch out for South Africa.
I've picked a different player who's been picked in the South African squad. I've picked Ryan Rickelton,
Ah,
the wicketkeeper, and I think the game that really made him really shine in front of my eyes was the recent game against Pakistan in the Test series. I know we've had a lot of Test cricket in the recent couple of months, which is why a lot of these thoughts are coming from these Test series. But he scored 260 in one game, and it was breathtaking. He did brilliant, and I think he's a player that can bat really, really well and can really hold South Africa's batting together. And I really am excited to see what he can do in ODIs. He hasn't played too many ODIs. I know he played. He scored a pretty high score. I remember, I think it was around a 90 odd against Ireland last year in UAE, I believe, as well. So a bit of the Asian condition experience there from him, and so he's a player who I'm excited to see, and I wonder what he's gonna do with coming off from that huge double century
mhm.
against Pakistan. But yeah, there we have it. That's our 8 picks from each of us, and you'll see it on your screen right now of all 8 players that we've chosen, both Sam and I. And I think do let
16.
us know.
I think 16 technically because we've all
All pick
picked.
different players.
Yeah, yeah. So there's
Yeah,
no overlap. So there's gonna be 8 from
no
me, 8 from him.
overlaps. I mean, it's gonna be a bit of a contest. We'll see who was right in a month and a half from now. We'll see if it was my predictions that were better or Sam's, or let us know as well what you think, who you think are going to be the top players from each countries. If you agree with any of us, if you absolutely disagree with any of our calls here. But I mean, it's exciting. I'm excited for this Champions Trophy, and let's see if our predictions seem to be correct.
Yeah, and without further ado, it's good morning, good evening, and good night, wherever in the world that you are.